She had no clue that she was being paid to carry illegal things. Was she lying, or was she just stupid and naive, as her own dad put it? This taco truck owner decided to fake a robbery and then set his truck on fire. And this teenager wanted to play a cop so bad. Let's get right to the dumbest crimes people will commit. Starting with number 5. No clue, no excuse. A British beautician's vacation to Mexico took quite a turn when she was caught with 15 million pounds worth of the white kung fu dust at a U.S. airport. Kim Hall, 28, from the UK, said she had no idea her suitcases contained illegal substances, insisting she thought she was just transporting cash for 2 British men she had met earlier in Portugal. Like that's somehow way less shady. Now she's facing up to 60 years in prison. Hall makes us wonder, was she truly that dumb, or was she just playing dumb? Hall's ordeal began when she accepted a free vacation to Cancun from a couple guys she barely knew, which is totally not suspicious. According to her, they claimed to be involved in real estate and just offered her the trip as a kind gesture. Near the end of her vacation, they randomly showed up and asked her to take 2 suitcases back to the UK, supposedly containing $250,000 in cash. Hall said that she had questioned the request, but they were like, yeah, it's totally legal, don't worry about it. So she said, okay. Everything seemed to be fine, but then her situation fell apart when she missed her initial flight. So instead of having her stay at her comfortable resort again, she said she was taken to a converted warehouse in the middle of nowhere in Cancun, where things changed. And by the way, if you've ever been to Mexico and you've left the touristy areas, you know it's a different world. Being taken to an isolated warehouse there late at night would leave us needing some clean shorts. Anyway, what exactly changed depends on which version of her story you hear, because Hall's given a couple different accounts. In one, she said she still believed she was just transporting cash and went along with it. She stayed the night in the warehouse and left in the morning. In another, she said she was suddenly forced to comply. Either way, by the time she finally left Mexico, she was carrying 2 suitcases, ones that just so happened to contain 15 million pounds worth of the devil's dandruff. Hall's free vacation ended at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, where Homeland Security conducted a random baggage check. Agents discovered 43 kilos of nose beers packed inside. Hall collapsed in tears as she was arrested, claiming she had been set up. Her defense has since shifted several times. At first, she insisted she thought the suitcases contained money and had no reason to suspect otherwise. Later, she said that she was threatened and forced into taking the suitcase. Her father has also suggested that her bipolar diagnosis played a role in her decision-making, and her psychiatrist reportedly backed this claim. Hall's family has passionately defended her, with her father calling her stupid and naive, but not a criminal. Which kind of sounds like something a disappointed father would say, doesn't it? Still, prosecutors weren't buying her excuses. Given the sheer volume of contraband found, she faces a Class X felony charge carrying a potential sentence of up to 60 years. It was dumb for Hall to agree to the vacation because once she did, there was no way out. She was going to be taking those suitcases or she was going to disappear. Why she would believe that 2 random strangers just wanted to dump a vacation on her is the most suspicious part to us, not whether or not she knew what was actually in the suitcases. She's either that naive, thinking that strangers would want to lavish her with a vacation for no reason because she feels in the goodness of people, or she knew exactly what she was getting into and is now trying to excuse her way out. Remember, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Number 4, hot tacos. A taco truck owner named Pablo Serrano from Visalia in Central California thought he came up with the perfect crime: stage a robbery, burn his truck, and cash in on a fat insurance check. But his scheme fell apart almost immediately because He's dumb. Serrano reported to Tulare County deputies that two men had robbed his taco truck at the something point, stealing $800 in cash and his $80,000 pickup truck. To sell the story, he even provided surveillance footage of the crime. But before detectives could even process the report, another call came in. A vehicle was on fire just miles away. When deputies arrived at the scene, they found this guy named Juan Mendez casually walking down the road, suspiciously close to the burning truck. As it turned out, Mendez was the same guy seen in Serrano's surveillance footage. After a bit of questioning, Mendez cracked like an overstuffed burrito and spilled the beans. This was all part of a pre-planned insurance fraud scheme. Investigators quickly confirmed that Serrano and Mendez had met weeks before to plan the stunt. The next day, Serrano wasted no time filing an insurance claim for the torched truck, fully confident his plan had worked. What he didn't count on was all the evidence the police would need to expose him was basically gift-wrapped and delivered on their doorstep. Just days before his arrest, Serrano had posted on Instagram, confidently telling his followers that he had spoken to detectives and had nothing to worry about. A post which aged about as well as his truck. With surveillance footage of the staged robbery, his burned vehicle found almost immediately, Mendez caught near the scene and confessing, plus a conveniently timed insurance claim, detectives didn't have to do much work. He was arrested soon after, and as of the release of this video, is now facing conspiracy, arson, and insurance fraud charges with a $150,000 bond. Mendez, the world's most cooperative co-conspirator, was also arrested. Authorities are still searching for a third accomplice, likely someone with an equally questionable decision-making process. The sheriff's office called the case Nacho Typical Crime because apparently the Tulare County Sheriff Office got jokes. We're sure they had a lot to Taco Bow. Number 3. Drowning in law enforcement. Ryan Borgwart, a father of 3 who was married for 22 years, thought he had the perfect plan to start a new life. Fake his demise, flee the country, and start fresh with some lady in Uzbekistan. The thing was, the plan he executed was one of the dumbest plans imaginable, with mistakes so glaring, it's a wonder he made it as far as he did. Back in August of 2024, Borgwart staged a dramatic disappearance by capsizing his kayak in Green Lake, Wisconsin to make it look like he drowned. He even went the extra mile, scattering his wallet, keys, and fishing gear to sell the illusion. But his grand escape hinged on something painfully obvious, everyone just assuming he drowned. Apparently, it never crossed his mind that law enforcement wouldn't just stop looking after a couple weeks. So he then rode an e-bike 80 miles to Madison, Wisconsin, caught a bus to Detroit, and slipped into Canada before boarding a flight to Europe. Pretty slick, right? But there was a problem. He kept using his real passport, not some high-quality fake passport, not an alias, his actual, traceable, government-issued passport with his picture. So when investigators checked travel records, they saw his name pop up immediately. That alone would have been enough to unravel his plan, but he wasn't done basically telling everyone where he went. Authorities discovered that Borgwart had methodically cleared his laptop and replaced its hard drive before leaving, which sounds thorough. Except it wasn't, since he left behind enough clues to let them track him electronically anyway. His digital footprint showed funds transferred to a foreign bank because, bank accounts are highly traceable and not tied to a laptop, and ongoing communication with some woman in Uzbekistan. And as if that weren't enough, Borgwart eventually sent video proof of life to authorities, completely erasing whatever was left of his dumb plan. He voluntarily recorded himself proving he was alive and well, wearing an orange shirt and standing inside what looked like an apartment. No real reason was given for why he did this, but the sheriff searching for him mentioned that Borgwart's biggest concern seemed to be how the community would react if he returned, like some kind of weird ego trip. So within a couple of months, he was already second-guessing his decision and testing the waters before coming back, which he ultimately did. Maybe reality caught up with him, or maybe he just realized that starting a new life in Uzbekistan with some woman he didn't really know takes more than just a half-baked escape plan. Either way, if you're going to flee the country, at least spring for a decent fake passport and be a little more cautious with your banking activities. Instead, Borgwart walked right back into legal trouble. He was arrested, charged with obstructing an officer, since faking your demise misleads officers, and now faces up to 9 months in jail and a $10,000 fine. On top of that, authorities are seeking restitution for the massive search effort, and his wife has filed for divorce, seeking sole custody of their 3 children. So if he wanted a new life, it looks like he's getting one, whether he likes it or not. Number 2, shop with a cop. When you're planning to shoplift, when do you think the worst possible time to shoplift would be? Seriously, think about it. There's a lot of times and many creative answers. Maybe you're at a security camera store, standing in front of a display. Maybe you're being followed around by a robot that just announces everything you're doing. But 32-year-old Hector Velasquez Maldonado actually found the correct answer, when the entire store is literally filled with cops. In Chesterfield County, Virginia, a Walmart hosting its annual Shop with a Cop event, a holiday program where officers help kids pick out gifts. On this particular day, nearly 50 officers were inside the store, plus a parking lot packed with marked patrol cars. But trivial things like that wouldn't stop Maldonado from attempting to shoplift anyway. And the crazy thing was, it's not as if he just grabbed a couple things. He legit tried to steal nearly $1,400 worth of merchandise. Security footage had shown him stuffing items into his clothes and trying to make a quiet getaway. Shoplifting while surrounded by law enforcement is about as stupid as you can get. Officers were quickly alerted and immediately fanned out across the store to find him. But instead of just blending in and casually walking away like a smooth criminal, Maldonado made a run for it, straight toward the back of the store. And surprise, surprise, that plan didn't work either. Officers cut him off before he even had a chance to get outside. One of the cops on the scene later said that the police were baffled by Maldonado's decision. The parking lot was completely lined with patrol cars, and his own vehicle was facing them. It was basically impossible not to notice. And yet, somehow, he didn't think that through. And for extra funsies, Maldonado already had multiple larceny cases and an active warrant for skipping court. So, as of the release of this video, he's now facing a felony grand larceny charge, proving that if crime doesn't pay, stupidity definitely makes it worse. Number 1, bad optics. A New Mexico teenager learned the hard way that impersonating a sheriff's deputy isn't as easy as he thought it was going to be. Brendan Wisniewski, 18, thought he could play pretend cop for a night, but that plan fell apart when a real officer driving by Wisniewski's traffic stop noticed something was off, such as the fact that he wasn't wearing a uniform and his police car was just a regular sedan with some lights he slapped on it. It all started just after midnight in Albuquerque when a police officer spotted a car conducting what looked like a traffic stop. The vehicle had red and blue flashing lights, but something didn't seem right. When the officer pulled up to investigate, he found Wisniewski dressed in regular clothes with a star-shaped badge on his belt, claiming to be a deputy from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. Wisniewski confidently explained that he had stopped the SUV for speeding, specifically going 120 miles per hour on the highway. He had even waved at the officer as he drove by, really committing to being the part of the squad. But when the officer asked for his credentials, his only proof of authority was the badge he had. After Wisniewski doubled down on his lie, telling officers he had been with the sheriff's department for 3 years, he even tried to fake his age, giving a birth year of 1994 instead of 2001. But the officer wasn't buying any of it, since he was an actual cop and knows how cops talk. So as the questions kept coming, Wisniewski's story fell apart. After some back and forth, he eventually admitted that he was likely obvious to that point, saying, "I'm just going to be straight up with you. I'm not a cop." Once the officer confirmed Wisniewski was a fraud, which probably didn't require much effort, they ordered him to return the documents to the driver he had unlawfully pulled over, who then left the scene. Meanwhile, Wisniewski was placed in the back of the officer's patrol car. But things only got more ridiculous from there. When supervisors arrived, Wisniewski tried another excuse, claiming the badge he had belonged to his late father. That lie doesn't last long either. He quickly admitted that he had just bought it online. Despite how poorly executed his stunt was, Wisniewski was arrested and charged with impersonating a police officer anyway. He initially pleaded not guilty, but later took a plea deal, landing himself a year of probation. Wisniewski's plan may have seemed clever in his head, but in execution, it was abject failure. He went from fake cop to real defendant in a matter of minutes, proving once again that some crimes are just plain dumb. Click to watch one of these next videos.